Susie, are there any comments?
No.
All right, welcome to the Skokie Public Library Board meeting for Wednesday, September 11th, 2024 at 6:32 p.m. Call to order. Susie, we have no comments from observers, correct? Correct. All right. And move on to approval for the minutes of the regular meeting of August 14th, 2024. Any comments, corrections, additions to the minutes? If not, can I have a motion to approve the minutes? August.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Director's report, Richard.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see all of you. So I'll just cover a few things in the report, but please let me know if you have any questions. So I already informed all of you separately, but the Petty Auditorium project did hit a snag, will be delayed a little bit. It's really something that after hearing the explanation from our architect and our construction management company, it was something that's out of our hands. You know, it's just supplies and the light fixtures are delayed. So, and because of the sequencing, how they finish off the work after they put in the light fixture, a lot of other things after that. So it's just something that we have to deal with. Thankfully, it won't cause too much of a disruption with programs. I think our staff will already kind of building that upward, knowing that sometimes there are delays in construction. So there wasn't a number of programs already planned for October. So hopefully it'll be quickly in November. So I don't expect it to affect the budget too much. There will be some additional costs with SMC's management because they had people on site a little bit longer to do the year, and there's a large scaffolding structure that we'll need to pay a little bit more for because again we're keeping it longer. So, but hopefully we'll there have been no other surprises in terms of discovery of issues, so we'll hopefully keep the project under budget. Just want to note that September 22nd to the 28th is Banned Books Week. So it's an important week for all libraries in the country to really highlight the importance of the freedom to read and kind of talk about the harms of censorship. So we'll have, we always do something during that week. And so we'll have tables out in the public areas to throughout the weekend, as well as on the bookmobile to just foster some dialogue about that with people who talk about it. We did that last year as well, and it went really well. So I had the pleasure of going to Oakton College. It's the Skokie campus. They dedicated and opened up the Learning Commons, brand new, renovated, incredible, huge turnout. Our trustee is a member of the administration and leadership team there. Invited us to attend, and Laura was there too, Jane, us, several other staff members. So we had a great time. Fantastic. So if you're on the Skokie campus, they made a lot of changes on that over the years. A lot of improvements. So if you haven't been back in a while or visited in a while, please check it out. It's the building is open to like the Skokie communities. I attended the Turning Point Living Room launch in Evanston. So there's already a living room program and service and space in the Skokie location, the main location for Turning Point, but they opened up a new location in Evanston as well. So I just wanted to support them because they recently joined the Turning Point board. So if you're not familiar with the living room concept, it's fantastic actually. I think people are experiencing mental health crisis instead of immediately feeling like they might need to go to the emergency room. So they have an option of going to the living room, which is a physical space in now Skokie and Evanston, and talk to professionals and specialists, get some support, guidance. And they have almost like 100% success rate in avoiding sending people to the ER. So it really mitigates that the cost of going to the ER and just like the, the extra resources that it takes to send people to the ER. So good to see so much to get that resource. Just want to note that the Chamber of Commerce is holding its legislative forum. It happens every year. So the chamber has like two really big events like this. The one is the legislative forum, the other is the state of the village. So both are a little different, but both equally worthwhile attending. So if the board is, if any trustees are interested in attending, please let me or Susie know, and we'll make sure that you're registered. A large number of staff always go as well, and it's a good time to ask questions of our local legislators, hear updates from them, and just also network with other people in the community. So, and this year it'll be at the Illinois Science and Tech Park, so that should be fun. Just a small note of the committee I joined. Any questions?
I would be interested in attending the legislative.
That's what
I probably will too. I'll confirm with you then. Thank you.
I
Said I wish I could.
And we have time to, if you need to check your schedules.
Echo Richard's comments about the Oakton Library services. And the other services. There was a VIP there. who showed us lots of nice photos of her afterwards.
You have to take the staff elevator, I think, or something special.
No, that's
That's a
what
public-
you use that elevator, yeah, when
I
they.
just thought it was special for.
It was
That's
special.
okay.
But we were thinking about, there wasn't an elevator in the middle of
Right.
the building, so you would have to like essentially go one end or to the other.
Okay.
So folks are in the library, they don't have to come out, go downstairs, come back down and go to the
And then it's
test.
connected right to the.
Yeah, and that's, that wasn't there before, that elevator. Really nice.
Other questions, comments for Richard?
I just wanted to say that I just appreciate the fact that like our administrative staff who continues to serve on boards. That this shows great, community connections, and taking time out to do that. Really was a great face forward for the library, so thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
That's changed. All right, let's move on. Approval of the August 2024 disbursement report, pages 5 to 13. Questions, clarification?
I just had a question about the buildings and grounds for the 11.4K for the plumbing. I know I think you said some of it was for like toilets. I know is this issue now resolved? Are we having clogging issues still?
That was something that we did to hopefully prevent
Okay,
further clogging.
okay,
So
good.
it wasn't like a new.
Okay. I didn't know if there was like a new issue that was still
No.
ongoing. Okay,
It wasn't enhanced.
okay,
So
okay, cool.
I can give you more details if you
No,
want.
that's fine. I was just curious if this was still kind of an ongoing problem or,
Hopefully not.
okay.
We'll kind of wait and see.
The questions, comments? If not, can I get a motion to approve the August 2024 disbursement report?
So moved.
Second,
All right, since it's money, we'll do it individually. Mira,
yes.
Ella,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
our guest star.
Yes.
All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on now to approval of Petty Auditorium Instruction Pay App number 2. To cost of $131,826. Richard, anything to point out?
No, it should be very straightforward.
Other questions or comments about that? Can I get a motion to approve the Petty Auditorium Construction Pay App number 2 at a total cost of $131,826?
So moved.
Second.
Again, it's individual votes. Mira,
Yes.
Ella,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
That passes unanimously as well. There's another pay app. This is the AV pay app number 2, as opposed to pay app number 2. Starting on page 16. Total cost of $233,813.55. Richard, anything you want to add there? They made some corrections.
Is it? I think it's 810,000.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
$810.55.
No, and just to note that you see some of the handwritten corrections. SMC informed me that the AV contractor's spreadsheet was kind of having a little calculating glitch or something, so they'll figure that out, but clean it up. But this is why we have like second and third set of eyes on these, so that they don't just accept what the contractor send us, but they're monitoring and adding everything up separately. So the numbers that you see in handwriting, there are the handwriting numbers.
Questions, comments? If not, can I have a motion to approve AV pay app number 2 with total cost of $233,810.55?
So.
Second.
All right, Mira,
Yes.
Ella,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
That passes unanimously as well. On to consent agenda, pages 19 to 35. Observations, responses, questions? Thank you for your service on your committee.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just highlight, as I mentioned in the memo, the staff that we've now profiled represent over 16 years of service to this library, not just in the profession. So we just have a wealth of knowledge here, and we've got a bunch more profiles coming from people who have more than 10 years. So there's lots more tidbits to come.
Nice.
I loved hearing about what life was like when they first, like what the tech scene was like, and all of that. That's really cool.
The fact that we didn't have an HR person until right about when these people arrived. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also appreciated seeing the breakdown of the events and the 35 intergenerational events. That was nice to see.
I was also excited to see, I mean, it's always great to see, kids participating in the summer reading program, but seeing that adult participation went up by so much.
Yeah.
And I know that was something that we had also talked about when we were talking about like the recommendations that our team had put forth for the school project that we did. So I think maybe going into the reading program next year, even before it launches, I would love to hear some more like plans about how we're going to continue to target not just kids and teens, but really growing the adult participation too. So I think that's really exciting.
We were excited about that. I know Jane had an interest to co-led our breaks and those summer program. We're excited about that. We're sending a handful of people to summer learning summit, basically, a conference. So we're excited about what they're learning there.
It's great.
Yeah.
And I'll just say, I walk, when I take my dog out for a walk or I'm just out in the neighborhood, I have seen so many of the t-shirts everywhere.
Yeah.
They're just out in the wild everywhere and it's so exciting. I'm just like, ooh, that's still my favorite t-shirt. It's really cool. So I feel like I've just seen them everywhere.
It's fun to see that.
Mhm.
Did have a question, page 21, which is about salaries for the month of August. There's a huge jump.
Yeah, because we had 3 pay periods, so twice a year we had 3 pay periods in this one.
No other questions? Can I have a motion to approve consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
I,
That passes. And the information about the Limerick insurance renewal, which doesn't require a vote, but Richard's informing us, page 36 and 37. It's a little complicated.
I try to break it down as best I could. So as I stated in the memo, Limerick is our insurance consortium, the pool that we participate in for employee health insurance plans, vision, dental, life, some of the voluntary, like hospital accident, indemnity kind of coverages. So I'm on the Limerick board actually, and the board every year or in the summer starts to talk with the broker, the insurance broker that we use as a pool to discuss what our renewal look like. And we base that on what the past year was like in terms of how high were our claims, like how did our pool perform essentially. And we knew that we had a high loss ratio and we didn't have a great year, so to speak. So we were a little concerned about what Aetna might come back with the renewal early on, like the projection, and what we were concerned about came to be true, and then came back with a pretty high potential projection, and then we knew that we had to go out to market again and ask Blue Cross Blue Shield and whatever other carriers out there who might be interested to give us a quote to provide some information. And it ended up being that Blue Cross Blue Shield offered a much lower renewal projection for us. We used to be with them and we switched out, and then I guess they wanted us our pull back. So it wasn't honestly a difficult decision. Like we needed to make this money for financial reasons and just kind of sustainability for the overall health of the pool. We did ensure managed to make sure that the plans that were offered will be offered in 2025 remain essentially the same. So there are no major changes outside of what the IRS will. Every year they increase their number for like the deductible or the HSA contribution levels. So those are mandated. So those are not in our hand, in our control. So, but everything else will remain essentially the same. The plans, there is going to be an increase for most of the plans, and so our HR generalist will communicate all of this to eligible staff. So not all of these here will be eligible, of course, but for those who are eligible for enrollment, all this information will be shared. And I'm hoping enrollment will start not too long from now, so in November. So some of the plans that are part of this renewal are not going to be changing really. So like for instance, the VSP vision plan, the life insurance, AD&T, so the other coverages that's locked in already, so there are no changes. The dental will be moved across Blue Shield as well, away from Aetna. And just a reminder, as I stated in my memo, the library continues to pay the majority of the premium costs on all plans. The employees, depending on what plan they choose, share the costs. But so all that, the actual amount that employees will be asked to contribute, depending on which plan will be shared with them. Then during open enrollment, everyone will choose what plan. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. But as you mentioned, there's no action item. We are part of the pool. who are a member, so these are, this has already been voted on by the board.
And yeah, I just want to point out that, as said, costs are sometimes going up, a couple of plans are actually going down a little bit. And what Richard's proposing is just passing on the cost directly, we're not changing the proportion of what we're paying. So everything's staying the same, but for plans going up 3%, plan cost to employees will go up 3%. It goes down 1.5%, their plan will go down. So whatever the insurance companies charging us, we're just passing directly through, but we're continuing to pay the same proportions.
So, I mean, it is a concern, obviously, every time, every year we don't do, that great with our plan, our pool. The renewals have, there's a risk of coming back with higher renewal rates. And then our portion, because we pay the majority of the premiums, will increase significantly, you know, so. We, in the budget projections that we've shared for the tax levy discussions, we've already built that in. Because we had an idea already what that would be, so. But, you know, it's manageable for now, we'll see. Cross our fingers and hope that we have some good years ahead of us and maybe have some low rate, renewal rates.
I just had two questions, because it says in here, like, the library pays the majority of the premiums, like roughly what percentage you pay versus.
It really, it ranges because depending
The
on
different type of
single
plan.
or the different, we offer 3 different plans.
Yes,
The HMO, the PPO $1,500 deductible and the deductible HSA plan. And then within those plans, we have single, with dependents and family and different levels. So it's anywhere between 65 to.
okay, and then the second question I had is like, it says here that obviously your, the HR generalist is going to communicate the rate changes. Is that typically done via like a meeting or a memo or an email? Like, the only reason I'm asking is, in places where I have worked before, we always had a meeting to discuss these, and they almost kind of did a comprehensive presentation where like, this is what the national average like increases in insurance. This is how much we're increasing. This is why it's happening. And it kind of gave a side by side of the changes. And I always appreciated that kind of transparency. So I'm curious at like what you share and how it
We
shares.
absolutely do that.
Okay.
So we have email and it's also posted on our intranet. But there's a benefit renewal summary essentially that our broker will provide for us, and then we just pass that on, and it breaks down the details of the plans. And then our HR generalist will schedule a number of basically meetings or presentations so to give everyone different times to be able to get that into their schedule and hear about the ones. And that's what he'll do. He did it last year as well. He'll go over the plans and kind of talk about how they're structured, and so just to educate our employees so that they can make the best choice for themselves.
Because I know when these changes happen, usually the questions are, how much more am I going to have to pay? And can I still see my preferred doctor? I just feel like those are always like the two top things that people really, and then kind of, you don't mean to block everything else out, but I think getting the information in a variety of ways.
There's so much more to consider than that, as you know, and so we definitely will cover those 2 questions, but then there will be other information
Perfect.
to round out what one should know to make an informed decision.
Right.
The good news is that our switch to Blue Cross Blue Shield, so our broker has the ability to kind of cross-reference with the current providers that our pool members are using, and there's a very high percentage of providers that are also in the Blue Cross Blue Shield. For example, maybe just a small number that aren't, but they can then also work with us to try to help the provider apply to be Blue Cross Blue Shield providers. So we did that when we switched to Aetna, and it ended up working out pretty well.
Okay. That's my question.
Yeah.
Richard, did I hear you correctly that the library pays 65 to 98%?
Yeah, depending on the plan.
How many, very detailed question, but I'm curious, like, what percentage of people would we be paying 90% of their premium?
I have, let me just see. I can try to email you this information.
Sure.
That's just our HS, high deductible HSA single plan, so that one line is at 90, but most of the other plans are or slightly lower.
Okay. Allison, would it be possible just to get a one-page table of here are the three plans by your options and what percentages are we paying? First, to have that as a reference.
It's obviously such a high cost for all organizations.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a huge, huge cost factor
Yeah.
for everyone. Likely to continue unless there's major changes.
Yeah, right.
And when you look at our budget, it's salaries and benefits.
Right.
Make it proportionate.
That's why, again, and depending on the sector, you know, as things continue to go up to such a high level, employers are known to sometimes say, well, you know, this is not sustainable for the employer, you know, so it's just something to be aware of.
Yeah, we'll see how the next few days go. We're all hoping that it's come and level out a little bit. We've had some tough years. And it's not, we're not alone, obviously. So it's a national kind of issues.
Absolutely, yeah.
When you said that you allotted the budget, what's the dollar?
I believe we increased it about 100,000, just to, the other difficulty with this is we don't know quite yet, how much that will be because we don't know where people will enroll. We can't assume that people will just stay in the exact same plans, you know. Yeah, so like, as I mentioned before, with our tax level, especially with budget numbers that I provided are really, I want to emphasize their ballpark, you know, for most categories. We have not had the in-depth kind of analysis that we actually do when budget is actually created for later in the year, but yeah, we went from, I mean, we were looking at 1.16 billion for our insurance contribution, which is, this current year is 1.1. It went up about 100,000. It's on our projections.
Any questions or comments? Yeah, we don't need to vote on that, so.
We'll send you
Yeah, just, it's just a one page.
yeah, we'll
Great. Useful as a reference. All right, then on to the final big item, page 38, adoption of the 2024 tax levy. This is why you guys get elected. And we decide here, it's put on the tax rolls. Richard?
Yeah, obviously I won't go through my entire memo here. Much of the information is carried over from last month. But I did point out a few things with the summary where just pointing out that as I alluded to last month, we have some significant capital improvement projects anticipated over the next 1 or 2 years. And we're working with 2 different firms right now to really assess what that might be, when we need to do it, how much it might cost. So I'm talking about the air handlers, hot water pumps. I want to emphasize that this is an aging building, right? I know we renovated, but the mechanical, the plumbing, All HVAC, electrical, all of it continues to age, right, like any other building. Obviously, we also get, a high number of people using the building, patrons and staff every single day, so it's to be expected that there will be ongoing costs for maintaining just the quality that we want to adhere to, so I emphasize that when I'm not going, and just to also emphasize that even though I did look at the budget again and adjusted slightly some of the numbers, but the fact of the matter is, it's like as Jean actually pointed out just a second ago, the salaries and benefits are going to be the majority of the main portion of our budget. So whatever we do with the other lines, it might kind of move the needle just a little bit, but really that the things that are not going to really be in play as much are the salaries and insurance, and so those are kind of that they are what they are, right? So because of that, if we don't increase the levy, we'll have I'm projecting this a budget shortfall. That's assuming that we spend our entire budgeted amount, which is not our practice to do. So we spend conservatively, and our finance policy dictates that states that we are allowed to transfer money over from. If we have an excess of revenue over our expenditures, we can transfer that into our reserve fund to continue to maintain the reserve fund at a healthy level in order to take on some of these big improvements over the years while maintaining, while not depleting the reserve fund entirely. Right? And just another reminder, you all know this already, but it's worth repeating that our finance policy, the board approved finance policy, states that there should be a minimum threshold of 5 months worth of operating in the reserve fund at all times. And the board can change that, right? And it can like lower that amount or increase that amount. But that's what's currently stated in our policy. So that's what that essentially means is we want to stay around 5 million in our reserve fund, which we are right now. After we take on a handful of these projects that we're projecting to have to do in the next couple of years, then it will drop below 5 million. I can guarantee that basically. So what that means is that if we want to leave our policy as is and maintain that threshold, then we'll need to make a transfer over at the end of this fiscal year and hopefully the next fiscal year to and put some extra money into that reserve fund. So, or adjust the threshold. So I provided a bunch of information here. I'm happy to kind of get into it a little bit more, talk about what I know there are a lot of numbers, I apologize, but there's no other way to explain something like this without offering all the details.
I appreciate the details.
Yeah. And the bottom line for me is that I feel like the board did well, and I support it. Of course, I serve with the pleasure of the board, so whatever the board decides to do, each in any given year with the tax levy, we'll work with that and just make it work as much as possible. But after so many years of a flat levy increase with no increase in our total dollar amount, and with inflation, the cost of supplies, materials, obviously our staff labor costs, they can continue to go up over the past 7 years, and our incoming revenue has remained largely flat. So at some point, the math doesn't add up, and we will start feeling that. So I would really recommend, strongly encourage the board to consider some type of increase. There are some options that are kind of laid out in terms of what it would yield, like a 1% or 5%. I recommend a 4% increase. That would kind of factor in the past inflation year at 3%, but as we all know, the year before that was abnormally high, right? So and given that we haven't had increases over the past 6 years, I think that 4% is warranted, and reasonable, honestly. So it doesn't mean that that would be locked in for longer than this 1 year, right? So, but next year the board would have another decision to make, and each year this is a fresh decision. But I just want to mention that, I don't think I put it in this memo, but, so, a lot is made that the village of Skokie not raising its portion of the property taxes for over 30 years, and that's wonderful. Then, but they also have additional revenue sources that we don't, so they have sales tax, access to, federal and state grants that we might not, and various other taxes and revenue streams. We essentially have our property tax revenue. And $100,000 each year from our per capita. Those are our basically our two funding streams, you know, so if we continue to keep that flat, there is no other revenue coming in. We're not selling anything, we're not gaining interest above what is kind of the market rate on our accounts. It's not, we're not at a point where there's no libraries, public libraries don't operate. So, we're also not like the park district. We don't charge for some of our programs and services, and there are no fees, right? So there's no revenue stream there, right? So I really encourage the board to keep that in mind, because it's not apples to apples comparing us to different funding or tax agencies in the communities. Yeah, happy to talk more about any of this.
Richard, could you walk us through the potential shortfalls as it relates to the different levels of percentages of potential tax levy increase?
Okay,
So here you're saying it's expected to be a shortfall of about 774,000.
right.
If there's no increase in the tax levy, that would be the projected shortfall this year. And then
So-
thank you for the chart that follows, right, where it goes from the 1% potential increase all the way to 5%, and it shows the amount that would give us in terms of additional revenue and the per capita cost to Skokie citizens. Could you walk us through the next layer of this? What would be the potential shortfall, if any, with the 1%, the 2%, the 3%?
So I can explain it in this way. So you take the operating budget shortfall of 774,000 and basically subtract the amount increased in total levy, the second line in that table, from that amount, and you can consider that kind of decreasing the shortfall by that.
That's really.
Like I did some of the math, so for example, if we did the 4% that Richard was recommending the memo, the potential shortfall would be like $235,475.
Right.
But that also doesn't include if like we end up being under budget, you know, so there's like a lot of things to consider, but that's the 4% amount right there.
But even with the 4%, we're about 200K under with a deficit in the budget.
Yeah, right.
But this is where every year I say, we're always under budget by $1 million. Last year, we had $1 million left at the end of the year. The year before that, we had $1 million left. The average $1 million at the end of every year left. So we have $1 million left like we have every other year through. That more than covers the 775,000 shortfall. I have trouble asking taxpayers, we have $1 million extra every year. As taxpayers, I'm hungry for zero.
I just want to clarify though, I bet what Gene was saying is somewhat true, in that there have been years where it's been around that old. Last year, we had about a little over $1 million of revenue and expenditures, but that also included an abnormal property corporate replacement tax revenue of about $450,000 to $500,000. Which we're utilizing this current year, right, as part of our over from last year, but that cuts that in half essentially, right? And then like every year with increases in our budget, we can expect that number already from going from the 500,000 to be that much less, right? So I don't, it's not going to be, if there's no levy increase, I don't anticipate us having ending the year with $1 million every year.
No, not, I'm not, I'm just talking about. Well, we had $1 million at the end of this last year, so I'm just talking about the next year.
Yeah.
If we ever went under $1 million, I wouldn't be making there.
No, I understand. And the corporate, I think I already mentioned this to the board, the PPRT, corporate replacement tax revenue from last year, that's not gonna happen this year. We know, we got the numbers, we budgeted 500,000 this year from that revenue stream, and it's gonna be around just slightly over 500,000 actual dollars or projected. So that's that kind of bonus, like that's sort of unexpected revenue is not gonna be there.
Miro is in pretty second.
I would like to know, you mentioned the excess amount that we had for multiple years. Do we know with specificity what that was? And I understand that part of it last year was the corporate replacement taxes that we won't have this year. But how many years prior did we have that surplus?
Yeah,
What
that's
was the amount?
shared with the board every year, you know, around the end of the fiscal year, there's a 7-year analysis. So off the top of my head, you know, there are several years back that goes back to 1 million, but consider during a number of those years, during the COVID years, we weren't like fully wrapped up with what we were doing, like in terms of programs, events, like maintaining the building, and all those costs were reduced, you know, so.
Do you know what it was in non-COVID years?
I would say if you look at page 39, when we moved to reserve funds, so last year we had $1 million, we only moved 250. The year before that, we transferred 3 million that we had because we hadn't moved a lot during COVID. So we moved.
That's basically like 3 years.
Right, so that's why you see in 2021, there was no transfer, which partly how we got 3 million, but 1.3 million, 1.5 million, 3 million, so we've had, that's all beyond the budget.
And what years were around the 1 million, what years were those?
We've been averaging a little over $1 million every year, but I said some years we didn't move into reserve during COVID, so that's why you got a 3 million bump 1 year and nothing the other year.
I understand that was the 1 million surplus, was that in
Every year.
non-COVID years?
Well, by these from 2020 through every year, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. I don't have numbers for this. For the 6 years, we've had 0 increase. We've always had $1 million at least year before, so the last 6 years it would go back.
We'll say when you look at the general operating fund, like year to date right now, we seem to be like that gap that we used to have is definitely tighter. Like right now, at 2/3 of the year, we basically spent 67 for, or I'm sorry, 67% of the budget is remaining and 67% of the years. So like, we're like right on budget right now. And I know that there's other things in addition to the general operating fund. So I guess in relation to the general operating fund, Richard, like I know we have about, like, how do you feel like we're tracking? Like, are we, because I did the same thing you did. I was like looking at the general operating fund for the past few years. It seems like between 400 maybe to like 800,000, depending on the year. But this seems to be tracking much tighter by this time of year compared to the other general operating funds that I looked at in the previous board packet. So I'm curious where you think we're going to land, because obviously we're big, this is where the extra money is coming from typically. So where do you think we'll net out at the end of this year?
It's honestly, it's
It's-
hard
I know
to
it's
say,
hard.
but I mean, I think I mentioned to you, maybe if you wanted me to put a number out there, 400,000.
So if that tracks, then it seems like going back to the line that, Jean was mentioning in the memo, when you look at the historical transfers into the reserve fund, like that. Like last year, it was like $250,000, right? Is that, am I reading that correctly?
That's what we moved to reserve.
Yes.
We had a million.
Because the other part was used for like the other projects, which I guess I'm thinking of that too, like you're mentioning all these other like projects we need to take on and repair. Obviously, I don't think it'll be that much if we're not gonna do Trino or anything. But,
Well, and again, the million from last year, I don't think of that as a million. I know it was, but, do you know what I mean? Like, it's that course replacement tax is not something.
it's not something you
Like,
can bank on, yeah, yeah.
that's a blip, you know, so like if you remove that, it really wasn't, that's not a reflection of. Where we were last year, honestly. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say. The cost, so. Let me say a little bit more about what you were saying in terms of the projected capital expenses, you know. If you take a 20-year projection, which is what we're working with our consultant on, the report isn't completely finished, but we had some early numbers, just in that spreadsheet. If you consider a 20-year projection of what we will need to do just to maintain like fix things, and I'm not even talking about a renovation or anything, but just maintaining and fixing things that will break down and reach end of life. If we want to maintain a $5 million threshold, like a balance in our reserve fund throughout the entirety of that unit process, like we're talking about like an infusion of money into the reserve anywhere between like $600,000 to $800,000, you know, so like we have to think of it as this is the cost of running a building and a library, like also like maintaining your home, like it's the same thing, right? Like, you know, it'll happen, so you put away money, right? So that's the type of mentality that we're trying to have, so that we're never in a position where you know, we have to replace air handlers and it's gonna cost $1 million and we're out of luck because we never replenished that reserve balance, right? And just over 10 years just depleted it, right? So that's kind of my mentality with this, is that I'm not, I think what Gina's saying is valid and true. I'm not disputing that. And that's what I've always said to the board. Look, like if the board passes a 0% tax levy, we will find a way to make things work, right? And we've accomplished a tremendous amount with that. I'm saying that we're at the point now where if we don't start putting more money into the reserve fund on the regular, like we're actually going to not adhere to our policy, and it's going to be putting us in a bad position, like say 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So I'm just concerned about that because I know the board has a responsibility to look at the present moment, obviously, and be a steward of the library's resources in the present moment, but also the sustainability is a responsibility of the board and administration. So I just want to make that clear.
And I also agree with Richard, I don't want to change the financial policy.
Okay.
As long as it's going under 5 million.
I agree.
I agree.
Responsible.
And I think the way you explained it makes a lot of sense. I think when you look at budgets, inherently you are automatically thinking, how close can I get? Yeah, you're thinking like, I want it to kind of balance out on both sides. But what you are saying is, yes, we want to do that, but we also need to make sure we have the correct amount in addition to kind of put in that rainy day fund, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just thinking about how close can we get to be like, yeah, we were under budget, but we were also able to transfer this amount to the reserves, right? So I hear what you're saying. If we continue at that pace, that budget, we're going to be getting closer to that kind of net zero, and then we're not going to actually be able. So I hear that. I appreciate the explanation like that because I think it helps. I think it helps shift the way that you're thinking about budgeting. You know, the objective is not to get as close to the number without going over. It's to do that. Plus
It's kind of
provide
holding both
investment.
in
Yes.
balance, the short term, which is strong. We're in a good financial position. I don't want to kind of send you the wrong message.
Yeah.
Our operating fund is in a very healthy balance. Our reserve fund is solid. We're above that threshold. We're paying for the petty out of the reserve fund. We pay for the chiller. We took care of the renovation project, so we're in a very strong state. I'm thinking of holding that and thinking about like 5 years. And by the way, like if we have a stretch where we have levy increases and they're compounding and we're doing it in a moderate way and building up our tax levy dollar amount. You know, it's not on the realm of possibility to think that there could also be another stretch of flat levy
Yeah.
increases if we stabilize and grow our reserve fund to the point where we know what if we calculate the 20-year capital asset study out, we'll be okay. Right now, I can tell you we won't be because we have some big ticket items coming up in the next 2 years. And unless something starts to happen, we will start dipping below. We'll go to like maybe 4 million, 3 million, you know, and then we'll have to really kind of be nervous about finding the money to transfer over to the reserve fund.
Yep, that piece of it was most compelling to me, that there's cumulatively the loss of opportunity to
The
generate
Yeah.
income, generate revenue. So forgive me, this is all a little bit new to me, but I'm just curious, so the proposal is 4%, and how then does the board make a decision about like if it's not 0, but there's some question about maybe not 4, to me, that feels like maybe a bit of a leap from 0. So what's the process of like hashing
We
that
do
out?
not have to be unanimous, it's majority, so
Okay,
somebody will make a motion for 1%, 1.5%, 3%, others will second.
I see,
So
okay,
we should have a discussion of where people are at.
okay, thank
We can
you.
sort of do a straw poll and go around and say we're so, I told you where I'm so inclined.
Yeah,
I can ask everybody else's, we can kind of get a sense.
I see.
If that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just needed a bit of education around how
But it's whatever,
to like
whatever motion.
hammer it out.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
It's through the discussion.
but it's open session, this is classic, what's supposed to be open session.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
I have a question
Yes.
in regard to funding sources, and I'm not quite sure how this works. But I have seen some libraries with like a Friends of the Library organization. Is that something we thought about as a source of additional revenue for the library? Or is that something that's totally off the table for Skokie Public Library?
Yeah, that's a great question. And some libraries have a friends group, and usually the typical kind of operation for a friends group is selling some of the accession books in a used book sale and then generating income, and then a revenue, and then kind of gifting it back to the library for a special projects here and there for distinct dollar amounts. And then there are foundations as well, like where it's just kind of a different fundraising development model. But our library has neither. We don't have friends and we don't have a foundation, is what I like to joke about. But so that has been historical, like a decision and mode of operation by the board, you know, so. My understanding and how it has always been explained to me personally, and I can't go all the way back, obviously, in time. But the way it's always been explained to me is that the library board from very early on avoided going down that road because they considered the public library a public good and the responsibility of the community to actually adequately fund. You know, so it never wanted to get into the business of relying on an outside group to hopefully have a good used book sale so that we can meet our budget, you know what I mean? So, and I actually think that that's actually that's a sound way of operating a library, you know, so that.
And people can donate.
Of course, we accept the donation.
That Hunter Passy gave money
Yeah.
to the library.
For programming, so. Yeah, so we accept donations, but it's not we're not reliant on.
They've been pretty small though, all the years I've seen that in.
Yeah, we don't really make a strong effort to raise money, honestly, because again, that mentality that this is a public good. It should be the responsibility of the community at large to regularly provide revenue for the library, as opposed to hopefully like with our handout, like hoping that someone buys a used book,
I had the same question as Ella, just something to consider moving forward, is it worthwhile to look at potential grants? I know we've received grants in the past from different programs and governmental entities, but is it something to consider?
We
to
do.
something.
Yeah, absolutely, and we will continue to, we have, and we'll continue to seek grant opportunities for different projects and yeah, that's not gonna stop, but also that's just up and down too, so it's hard to rely on something. For sure.
And in regard to the foundation, to a foundation, not the foundation. In regard to a foundation, that would be a separate entity with a separate board, correct? Because the
Right.
foundation will be operated
Yeah,
separately.
and that's where you also, from what I've heard, I don't know, I've never operated with their group here. But that also introduces, obviously, one can imagine some different dynamics between the library board, the friends board, and then the foundation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good question.
Happy to see the community's always been very supportive of
Absolutely.
the library.
That's, I can agree on, and convinced, right?
Yeah. Yes.
But as I mentioned, I literally never heard anyone tell me that they, feel bad about, the amount of the paying towards the libraries, because we'll just, appreciate the value of the library. And even people who don't use the library regularly or often, they appreciate the good value that and the impact the library has on the community as a whole. And it's a better place to live and work, and it's a stronger community because of what we do. So it's not even an individual gain, but it's a community gain.
I have one other question, and again, forgive me, it's like super obvious to everyone, but it was a similar question around communication, how does this get communicated or at all, or is it just like a surprise when that's.
So, I mean, this board adopts a levy, so it's actually an actual dollar amount, right?
Right,
And that gets communicated to the village
okay,
finance director and the village manager. And they will fold that into their levy ordinance for November, December this year.
okay,
And then the village board actually approves it and adopts it.
I see,
So, but they understand, and it's always noted that the library has its separate board, and you all actually
review that.
adopt their own levy, so it's just kind of a tacked on to their levy ordinance, obviously.
I see.
So, and then the village actually communicates it through, I believe they put it in their newsletter, and they always, have that graphic of what the dollar bill sliced up with.
Right,
X percent is of your tax bill is from the library versus
Okay.
park district versus average school district and that's where I always want to remind people, that some of these other entities have other revenue sources, so it's not apples to apples. I'm not criticizing anyone on the organization, of course. I think they're all doing. This is a community that does well with its financial management across the board. But I only know about the library, and so we don't have those revenue streams, so we really rely on property tax.
Richard, you happen to remember in that graphic, which I remember looking at every year in the newsletter, do you remember what percentage the library is?
5.06.
5.06%
As
of
the last.
the Skokie
Yeah.
tax bill for each household is the library.
Yes, the same question, because I had all these questions ahead of me, I was like, so yeah.
I mean, the average, In every community in Illinois, just because of the funding models of like the taxing agencies, it'll be the public school districts that are the bulk of the taxing. And you all know that right from April. So the average grade school is 42%. The park district is 4.5, the village is 5.72, the county is around 4.9. And we're at 5.06. The average high school, which is we have teaching and team, is 29%. So we're a sliver of the tax bill.
Can you repeat though, because you said, our district is what percentage for something?
My understanding is 4.5% is what the village has on the website,
And then the village is what percent?
5.72. Again, I don't think that by and large, I've never sensed that our community looks at that graphic and feels negatively towards the library's portion. And I think the board should be proud of that. I can also say that we've had a long of tax levies while renovating the entire building, you know, so it's unheard of.
No, that's your credit,
No.
Allison's credit, everybody's credit.
Well, great, I mean, so it's joined up.
Well, at the bottom, the 20-year.
Absolutely, yeah.
Unspoken piece there.
But can you speak it for people who are near to the board to know the library has significant fund issue out there in the amount of,
Yeah, so we took a $17 million bond out in 2019 to pay for a 20-year repayment schedule for massive renovation. That followed the end of a previous prior 20-year bond that paid for the last major renovation, which was the expansion of the library on the third floor back in around 2000. So and I will share something I shared to the board back then when the board was making this decision about whether or not to approve the issuance of the bond. Is that with a major renovation project like that, I think it's completely fitting for that to be taken out, to be paid over 20 years, because it's a generational benefit. So rather than putting the cost on, say, today's residents of Skokie, it's actually being paid back by each year's residents for 20 years, right? So the people who are moving in 10 years from now will pay a smaller portion, of course, but they'll pay their portion of enjoying the library services in the building, right? So it's a public good and a generational good that is being offered. So I don't think that's unnatural or inappropriate, but yeah, it
of
is.
course, a very typical way of funding public projects.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But most typically, I mean,
Right.
schools do it, the village does it, we do it.
To your point, it kind of goes both ways, you know, like future generations that will live here will be paying off the bond in the same way that we have to be responsible and make sure that we're planning for the future as well, you know, so it
All
comes full circle,
yeah,
that's what I say, it all comes
connected,
full
yeah,
circle.
exactly. But the Penny project and the third floor project, you know, we pay out of our reserve fund, you know, so it's not that that's the automatic path for every project that we take on. That's a singular, you know, massive renovation of a large amount.
It was such a large scale
Yes,
project,
exactly.
yes.
And that's what the board wanted to do, is take on an entire project at once rather than piecemealing it. And I'm so glad that
They're investments also for the future of the library.
Yes.
Right, so you've got 4% and 0. Where are the people at between that?
I appreciate what Amanda said about, you know, the increase from 0 to 4. That, you know, is something to consider. And is there someplace else that we could all consider?
And you're not limited to whole numbers. So because you're 1.27, you know, whatever you want it to be.
It'd be easier on us. but-
Yes. I think I caught that this second. To your question, how does it work?
Yeah.
I will say, I think for the past few months, when we've been discussing this, I have been kind of more in the camp. I don't think what we've been doing is sustainable. Like, I think with the cost of things going up, making sure we stick to the current finance policy. I appreciate what you said, Amanda, as well. It can be a little shocking to the system, going from 0 to 4, but I also see everything that Richard is outlining here as well, just to make sure that we are putting enough and really investing in the future. So I'm kind of falling somewhere around 3%, just to kind of test the waters, see how it goes, see where we have, because as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, when I look at that general operating fund, things are much tighter now at this time of year than they traditionally have been. So I think we will still probably have a surplus at the end of this year, but based off of the way things are currently tracking, I don't think it will be as much. And then from there, if we find that we are a lot tighter, then we could do another, or levy, possibly next year, or to Jean's point, then if we continue to have this excess surplus and these calculations don't look like they're gonna, it just sucks that we have to like do it now rather than like waiting. It's kind of like you're trying to guess what happens. But then to your point, if it ends up being another big surplus at another time, we've at least had this investment that we can carry year over year. So we've done that. And then we don't necessarily have to do a levy next year. So that's kind of where I'm falling. I'm trying to be fiscally responsible to the library and ensuring we're following the policy, while also trying to be very responsible and respectful to taxpayers as well. That's kind of where I'm right now.
Michelle?
Absolutely. I don't think I've landed on any one thought yet, because I think that on the one hand, I understand us laying the groundwork for the future and making sure that we have monies available to do and there in case of emergencies or some of these bigger projects that we have upcoming, knowing that although we've done some wonderful work on the surface, the underneath not fun stuff, right, that our money has to get, that has to be spent on to keep the library running. I also am very conscious of the fact that property tax rates are so high right now, that we have a very, I think, a very healthy budget, and we haven't dipped into cutting in any sort of ways. So I'm conscious of the fact that there are other ways that we could be utilizing the budget in order for us to have more money at the end, in order for us to put that into reserve at the end of the year. So, I don't think I've landed on it. And I came into this meeting to listen to the dialogue, to hear the questions, because I haven't really landed on what I started.
Can I just comment on one, the comment about the budget and cutting? Honestly, we've been doing that for the past 6-7 years, and getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And so at this point, like I said, the salaries is the massive elephant, right? And so even if we cut every line, like during COVID, we cut it like 10% across the board. But that was during COVID. We were hoping fully. It will result in less money for programs, collections, continuing maintenance of buildings and grounds, IT. Like IT, the line has remained flat for many, many years, and we've lived and worked efficiently with that. Like collection, same thing. Programming has gone up because our service model has changed over the years, right? Where we're offering more and more programs, right? So that was an intentional infusion of money into the area. There aren't a lot of areas, to be honest. If there were, I would love to explore that, but I just don't see it right now with our budget lines. There's just not a lot of cushion, or like kind of that. So, if we would be talking about cuts then, you know what I mean, not like kind of efficiencies. It's a little different.
What are some examples of those areas that could be reduced?
No, I'm not recommending reducing them because
Right.
that would actually reduce services, you know, like collections programs. Like promotion of our, what we do. Tech infrastructure. We have an amazing tech infrastructure and it costs a lot of money, but we are very responsible with. The same amount of money each year about that, you know, and still able to do everything that we need to do. I just don't see areas where we could, like buildings and grounds, we have, lots of money going to like repairs and cleaning the building. I wouldn't want to like cut the carpet cleaning out, and cut the night cleaning out and not repair the toilet on time, you know, like, those are just things that we need to do, you know, to maintain a level of service that our community is accustomed to. And that kind of goes back to my point about, I think people come into this building or on the bookmobile and online and they see the value. And I think that people would be honestly more concerned if the service level dropped. Because of cut to the budget or staffing. Yeah.
Which is that, for example, programming, if we eliminated all of our programming, we didn't have it anymore, that's only $154,000. So it's like this much compared to the salary lines, and same thing, if we stopped printing in Felicity, we didn't print anything, it's only $128,000.
Yeah.
So it's not keeping up with the level of having to replace the air handlers for $1 million.
That's not where we're gonna gain it.
And I don't want to see this happen either, but the obvious place would be personnel. You don't want to cut programs and services, but most of our money goes for personnel and benefits. So if you stop filling open slots, that sort of thing. That
And which of course would then diminish our,
affects services and programs.
because that's a key component of delivering services are the people in the building.
But that's the big ticket.
Exactly.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
I'm going back to these numbers. I just want to make sure I understand. So the total amount divided by the number of households. Is this in addition to what taxpayers are already paying?
Yeah, and I just want to, yes, and I just, yeah, go ahead.
What's the average amount that taxpayers are paying now?
It's on the next page, they are a couple of pages down, the per capita on page.
Well, this is I know you're asking, no, and it's really
199.
difficult question.
You mean
That
per
says per
household?
capita spending?
Yeah,
Yeah, 199 per capita spending for Skokie, plus then,
That's what, okay,
that's our
I thought it's
operating budget
sure.
divided by the population.
okay, so, because I read that a different way, as in, that's what we're spending as a library.
That's right, the per capita spending is a little different from what you're
Yeah.
asking.
oh, sorry.
Per capita spending is our operating budget divided by the total population, not total household.
And you're asking what are the taxpayers, so what, well, that depends on the taxpayer.
So I'm asking what the average is, so that I can know how this is impacting the average, because seeing $5.60, if we're
Well, and it's not even taxpayer, it's property tax.
property taxpayers, yes.
Right.
Right.
Which I think that was the question I had asked.
Yeah.
I have the numbers right here.
Okay, yeah, go
You
ahead.
said that, it's based, because I was asking, there's a difference between average and median. So I was curious when I saw that this was like the average, like if you had some very expensive properties for that could totally drive it up. So you said in Skokie, the 2023 average property tax bill was $6,967.
The median.
Oh, I'm sorry, the median, yeah, the median. And then based off of that, currently at the 5.06% for the library, average person or household, I'm sorry, is paying $352.53. So if a 4% tax levy were put on that, based off of that average amount, that would be an additional $14.10 on top of that. So then that,
The reason why this is difficult to calculate and say for sure, and the way the reason why I phrased it that way is this. It all depends on the EAV, the equalized assessed value of each household.
I get that.
Yeah,
My question is, when seeing $28, I'm making a different decision, like, oh, I'm trying to make sure I'm understanding it correctly, because when I first saw these numbers, I was thinking, oh, $28 a year, and, but when I think about it in the larger scheme of things, if I'm paying $400 a month, and then it's an additional $28, that's a different impact than just
Yeah.
$28. So when I,
That's the way to think of it. It's 28 on top of the 400.
Right.
So in this case, it's $14 in addition to $352.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also.
I think it clicked a little late, and I was like, oh, wait. no,
It is per month.
The property tax is not be $5.60, so we're doing pretty good here in Skokie. Okay,
Yeah, no, the numbers I shared with Mary is the tax bill, not like a per month.
Yeah.
Which is twice a year.
no, I get that.
Tax bill.
Yeah,
My question was
But I'm
just,
saying her tax bill saying it's $14. On the tax bill would be twice a year would get you to your 28.
Yeah.
okay, yeah,
So it's per year, it would be a $28 increase on top
so
of 300.
on top of what they're, yeah. Because that's a different conversation for me than $28 flat. So it took a second for it to click.
Great questions. Allison, do you wanna, crunching numbers, anything you add or enlighten us on?
And all I'd say is with budgeting, there's a lot of variations that come into play. We also have the income off of our interest. And I know that the feds are talking about decreasing interest rates, so that income that we have budgeted at 300,000. Our current rates hover around 5%, so if they have that or whatever, I mean, we're out that revenue as well. So, I mean, inflation's going up and, you know, the economy is starting to freeze up again. So, I mean, my opinion would be probably shouldn't share my opinion, but, yeah, I think the budget is getting tighter, just seeing it on a day-to-day. Sometimes we have, you know, unanticipated expenses like water bill increase or, you know, utility increases that there's no way we could have anticipated.
Yeah.
So on top of our capital things that we're planning for, so, I mean, even if you put a little bit extra in the budget to, you know, it compounds as years go on. So in 5-10 years, you'll have that little bit of extra that you wouldn't have had if it wasn't done now. So if you do an increase now, then in 10 years, you're not gonna have to do a 7 or 8% increase.
That piece is also compelling to me. Like I know I already said it, but I feel like as I'm kind of just turning it around, that aspect of it seemed to make sense. And then to continue to amplify all of the ways that this place is a value. And that we have reached a point where investing in the future is making more sense. Although I am leaning more towards like a 2 to 3 increase just because of the precedent that had been set and being able to kind of own that and communicate that to anybody who might ask us at the grocery store and whatever, that there's some, I just want to be able to have a strong sense of rationale. And that we continue to amplify all of the ways that this is more than a library, it's not more than a place to get books, but a place to really be a full service place for. So that's kind of the way I'm thinking about it now, but it's also a very new conversation.
And I think for me also, yeah, I think we have to also remember that we do have the $5 million reserve, right? So that's why we have a reserve fund. And so if and when there are some fluctuations, we do have reserve funds there to pay off that, right? So I think, and I think this is a big piece of it that I'm trying to wrap my brain around, is that we have this $5 million reserve, which I think that we should continue to keep. But that's a lot of money for us to have on reserve while still asking taxpayers to then pay more money on top of what they're
I
already.
don't think that's a lot of money. I don't think it's.
I understand, but I think that when you think about the optics of that, and not only that, but also that we've done some major renovations, right? And although we did take out that bond, so that's all taxpayers again, right? and we were able to have monies that were, so that we could do the third floor, for example, we're doing the petty, and those were all, so that did not. That did not come off of taxpayers in that sense, right? It's not an extra tack on later. But then for us to have this reserve fund and then to now ask to get more money from taxpayers on top of that, I think is, you know, it's, I'm having a difficult time like rationalizing that and having some sort of just.
I can understand that. I mean, all I can say is that, it's not abnormal at all for libraries to be at the 4 to 5% every year. Every single year. Park districts, the park district was at 4.99 the past 2 years. These are not abnormally high or kind of, you know, it's a palatable number that taxpayers absorb because they know what they're getting from great park district schools, libraries. So 4% is not, I promise I'm not asking. I know that we're going from 0, but a 4% is, I think I shared like the history of our library levies at last month's meeting. Like there were years when we were like in, you know, above 5%, 7%, 9%, you know, so.
What years were those, 7 and 9?
Yeah, I can go back and pull it up, but my point is that these are not kind of outrageous for taxing money. I'm not trying to minimize the real life impact on people, but I'm just stating it, what my understanding is, I guess, you know, and the 5 million in our reserves, that's not going to be there, I promise, if we don't start doing something here, because we will have to replace air handlers. We will have to replace the hot water pumps. That reserve fund will not be over 5 million in 2 years, you know, so it's, the board has to make a decision, I think. Does it want to change the finance policy and live with a very low reserve fund for the size of building that we have? Or does it want to increase the levy, start increasing the levy again, so that we can maintain the 5 million threshold, maintain our building properly, do all the things that we need to do to take care of what we've been doing and continue to deliver great services. You know, that's how I'm seeing it. I really don't want to be like a hard sell here, you know, but I want to make sure that I'm clear about. This is one of my primary jobs, right, to inform the board of how what my lens is here, you know, so that you have everything that I have. So that's what I'm trying to do. I hope I'm not coming across as pushing anything. So Mira, like we had, starting from 2002, 4.8, 5.5, 7, 9, 7, 6, 5. And then 2009, we all know what happened around 2008, right? 3, 2, 1, 1, 2,
Say
1,
that
1.
again, after the Great Recession.
We went down to 3, and then 2, and then it was 1 or 2 or 1.5 1 year. The last increase was 1.5 in 2017. And then the past 6 years have been 0. So since 2009, the library has been under, so let's say since 2010, for the past 14 years, it's been 2% or lower. But in other libraries, I mean, I hate to do this because I'm not director at other libraries, so I don't really care about other libraries, but the fact is that those libraries are doing these regular levy increases of like 4 or 5%. And that's why you see our per capita spending. We have one of the highest populations, but we're in the middle of our per capita spending. So people are saying, well, you're spending too much money on a library. And so, okay, I can show them that per capita list and say, actually, we're not, you know, we're actually not even at the top. You know, we're in the middle. And every year that other libraries increase their levy and their operating budget and we remain static, we will start going down and we'll be at the bottom of that list. So that's just the reality, and if the board wants to accept that, then I will accept that too, and that's what we'll do, you know, but I want the board to have a clear understanding of that, so that later on, you know, the story isn't, well, how could we have done this, you know, why are we at this stage, why are we not offering these services or able to fix things? Well, why didn't we save money to do this and that, you know, because we know it's coming. We just have to like actually plan for it, so.
So we have unofficially sort of a 3%, 2 to 3%, not sure, 0, LO, where you sort of at roughly
0 to 2.
2 to 2, Mira.
I agree with the point about inflation. I think that's a really important factor that we should all look at seriously. I mean, we looked at the insurance rates, for example, you know. And just all of us, if you called your insurance agent, you know, you know, this is just the reality. Every time I call, they say it's inflation, and they're right. They're right. All the costs have gone up, as you said. So I think the reality is, I don't think 0, unfortunately, is sustainable unless there were other areas in the budget that were looked at very seriously and were adjusted, you know. So with the existing budget and history of the budget and where we're the categories of expenditures, I don't see how 0% is sustainable. I also agree with some of the points here about going from 0 to 4. That's very difficult for me. You know, I've always encouraged due diligence and some fiscal restraint in these things. So
So what's your range?
2.5, 3.
Okay. Michelle, back to you. I think I Well, everybody else.
Either way, it would, my voice would have to be heard anyways,
Yes,
as far as
exactly.
the decision that's made. You know, I would hesitantly go between 0 to 2%. You know, I do understand, and, you know, I don't want to see our levels of service drop. I don't want to see programs cut. I really don't want to see staff let go, right? They're our most important asset. So I really, as much as I would want to stay the 0%, I don't think that that is sustainable. And I do think that I want to err on the side of more conservative, and then we can always, we'll talk about this again next year, right? So we can have a better idea. We don't know what the economy is gonna look like, you know, but at least that does pad it in a way for the future. It might not be as maybe as risky as it, in my mind, it is, right? But I think that we would need to increase it.
So what I'm hearing is the majority would support 2%. Some would percent more would support more than others. That's a fair summary.
That's very fair summary, yeah.
Yeah,
One last call, 3%. I'm just so worried about our,
How about you clarify, because I hear what you're saying, go back to when I look at the budget, and I'm going back to the previous month's board packet, when I look at fiscal 25 and fiscal 26 capital expenses and projects. So maybe walk us through the situation, when I look at the budget that you put together in this memo or proposal, you are saying expenditures, for capital projects, 100% of that would come from the reserve fund at an estimated amount of $1.5 million, right? So if we did not levy appropriately, the reserve fund that Michelle was talking about earlier, that 5 million would automatically drop down 3.5, right? Am I reading that right? So like, I want to understand how we're because it seems to be the crux of this, is like how we're planning for these capital improvements and making sure that the operating fund is okay, and also making sure that the reserve fund is at the acceptable level, right?
Yeah, that's.
So I
that's
want to make,
what
I
I'm-
really want to make sure I'm understanding
Yeah.
the plan and how we're budgeting for the capital improvement projects. Because when you look at these line items, I mean, the windows are $300,000, $327,000. A valve is $172,000. So I
Well,
mean,
I don't know.
I know it's more than a valve, but you know, but it's basically, it's for hot water. So I mean, that's pretty critical to the building smoke. So I want to understand how this is being budgeted for and where the money is coming from.
Yeah, so I think, thank you. So the reserve fund, after all is said and done this current fiscal year, I think will be like, so essentially like May 2025, right? I think we'll be around 5.3 million.
Okay,
So we're already at the threshold. Anything else in terms of work that's done over the next 2 years, which could be, let's say it's, hold on a second.
like the amount that you had in fiscal 26 was $758,000 from the previous month's.
Okay, so let's say it's. Let's say it's like a total of 3 million over the next 2 years. If with that'll bring it down to 2 million essentially, our reserve fund. Now, if we have, I don't think it's gonna happen, but say 1 million. In the next 2 years, both to carry over, to transfer over, then all said and done, we're at
It
4 million.
offsets, yeah.
No, 4 million, like,
Okay.
so, like, if we're at 5 million, we spend 3 million over the next 2 years. I'm talking about the next year, 2 years, not this current fiscal year, but the 2 years next subsequent. Then we're down to 2 million. If we add, let's say, a transfer of best case scenario, I really don't think it's actually feasible, but 1 million in each year, those 2 years. Then we'll have brought the level up to 4 million. We're still 1 million under the threshold. Right, so. The math doesn't work for me, like, that's why I'm trying to get us to do a substantial, like, 4% right now. I'll take a 3, honestly. And then next year, maybe in the next couple of years, follow that. It quickly compounds, and we're looking much better. And then, like, say 4 or 5 years out, we can reevaluate things, right? We'll see how the insurance renewal is. We'll see how some of these how the building holds up, right? But right now, I just don't see it. If the board chooses lower tax levy increase, I mean, it's essentially okaying a change in policy in a reserve fund, because that's how I see it. Because the math literally doesn't work for us. I don't want to scare anyone. We're gonna do these.
So that's why I asked for clarification.
Yeah.
Those are the biggest areas in the budget, right? Like the salary, the insurance, we see the levels and they seem to go up incrementally with increase in cost. It's these capital expenditures that seem, they're the larger investments in the building. They're things that sometimes can be unforeseen, some of them we can budget for. That's why I just wanted to have more clarity on.
Yeah, thank you.
That's the other big bucket.
That's the other big
Yeah.
bucket. The salaries are the current big bucket, right? And we know that's pretty predictable, like around what that might be.
Right.
If we wanna succeed in retention and recruiting. The other kind of thing that's kind of hanging over our heads is and I want to make sure that it's clear, it's not because we did anything wrong, this building is ancient, it's
Yeah,
a 1960 building and a 1970 building smushed together, right? So it's going to require work, right? And it's a large facility, so it's not like at home where you fix a pipe and it's like over $200. It's every job is like several $1,000s, you know, so. And a major change in our HVAC or plumbing or whatever, we're talking about hundreds of thousands. So. I feel like that's the reality of the situation. Again, I'll accept whatever is decided and. We'll do our best, you know. I just want to be full clear on this, so. I mean, I would love for the board to approve a 3%, to be honest, you know, and hopefully our projection will be surprised and we'll end the year really strong and. Maybe, you know, maybe next year there's some kind of surprise with our renewal and the insurance and we're not increasing that. Maybe we have a good business insurance like a Lira insurance renewal and. But you know, costs are rising.
I'd love to see in the future too, some kind of a comparison analysis, for example, on the employer contribution to insurance premiums. You know, I don't know all the details about the 90%, the HSA, but you know, it would be something, again, I think very important to deep dive into to see what are our options in the future if costs in healthcare continue to rise, as most companies are anticipating they will do, unless there again is some very substantial change in the national treatment of this issue. But you know,
we were fortunate this year with the renewal that came in, but for sure if this trend continues, you could definitely do. I will want to do that.
we have no choice.
were trying
I'm
to-
saying if it continues to
Yeah.
escalate
Yeah.
the way it is in terms of cost.
Right, so we have all the information. Somebody want to make a full motion?
Make a motion, 3%.
Do you want a second to 3%? And then it's individual voting. Mary,
Yes.
Amanda?
Yeah.
Michelle?
Pass.
I'll vote no. Ella? No. Maren?
Yes.
It needs 4, you're the. Once we're all shot now?
Yeah. All shop on.
They know.
I mean, I can play auctioneer, 3's too high, I'm assuming, so somebody want to make a motion for something lower?
I propose a 2%.
2%. Somebody want a second 2%? Second, all right. So we're going to put Mary,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Ellen,
I guess I moved to slow, I'm trying to go in between.
you can pass if you want, we'll see what Mira said.
It's gonna go.
Yeah, she said no.
No, okay,
Yes, I know.
Maren?
No.
No? 2%?
What about you?
I'll say yes, 2% passes. No, right? Did
Do we have 4 votes?
you vote?
I said yes.
Yeah. Good. So 2% pass. So then vote quicker on the. Sorry, what's that?
I should have been a little quicker, I was trying to go in between them.
All right, 2% passes, then the Last item is comment from trustees. Actually, yes, go ahead.
Can we just note the total amount, Susie, on that? Just
So
because
can I
it's
just
a estimate
clarify?
dollar amount, yeah.
I thought we were kind of trying to get to 2.5. I'm fine with 2.
I'm glad I could also.
So I'm confused as to how this is
Sorry.
going and not sure how we were trying to communicate this. So I'm fine with 2. I'm not opposed to 2. But I thought the procedure was we were trying to get in between 2 and 3.
So the
So
motion was for 2 and that passed with 4 votes.
Sorry. I could also.
yeah, I think we're confused as to what just transpired here.
Can I reverse that?
There was a motion for 2% that passed with 4 votes. I'm not sure what's.
I'm not confused, I'm just salty that I didn't speak up faster.
You just what?
Salty that I didn't speak up faster. Yeah, I'm not confused.
It's a,
Jean, respectfully, I thought we were still kind of ferreting out what the range was.
Yeah.
I thought we were doing that, so I did not realize we were taking like a final vote on that.
What did you think the motion and votes were for?
I just the way it started at the 3, I thought we were trying to get to some consensus, so I just want to be clear that 2, I'm fine with 2. I thought that maybe some were trying to get to 2.5.
I appreciate.
Seems to say 2.5.
It's fine.
It's really okay.
Did you intend to say 2.5 and not motion 2?
I'm open to that range, so maybe it should.
It's totally fine, the 2% is workable, I really appreciate the board's movement on this.
If it's possible, though, I would like it to be reflected that I'm fine with 2.
Yeah.
I'm fine with 2.
But Susie, you have the dollar amount, it's on the, can you just mention that there's a dollar amount, a total dollar amount for the 2%?
2% increase is 269,500. Oh,
Yeah. Who need to say that?
so the 13,744,486 for the total levy we'll be making.
Which is reflected.
2%, right? So that's
So can we clarify then who is voting for the 2%?
the 4 of us voted.
And I'm saying that I'm fine with 2%.
Okay,
So you can let the record show that
we're also, okay,
I voted yes for 2%.
okay. Susie, you. All right. Thank you. Yeah, all right, thank you. Final is comments from trustees. There was one thing I wanted to put into the record, so. Richard and I got a letter from Skokie Historical Society with a concern. That Richard will be addressing, but I just wanted to make the board aware and read it into the record so we can say we acknowledge it publicly, so. The letters from Dick Whittree and Pat Whittree from the Skokie Historical Society. And those of you who don't know Dick Whittree, so you do, he's sort of a Skokie historian, former library board member as well, so. Said, Dear Gene and the Skokie Public Library, July and August 2024 newsletter. 13 electronic images are shown on page 3 through 5. All of these original photographs were collected by Skokie Historical Society. The originals are maintained at the Skokie Heritage Museum. Also, Niles Center Skokie Fire Department images and artifacts are also part of the collection located at the Heritage Museum. Many people do not take time to understand the collaboration between the library and the Historical Society and the Heritage Museum. The library applied for and received many grants of publicly viewed portions of the Historical Society collection electronically. Both Historical Society and Heritage Museum are grateful for the effort of the library for past projects and hopeful future projects designed to showcase and preserve Skokie's history. In the current newsletter featuring the Explorer Local History article with accompanying images noted above, the author overlooked giving credit to the Heritage Museum and Historical Society for ownership and care of the original photographs. The attached printouts. Please inform your staff of this oversight does not even occur. Lastly, the favor of correction in the next issue of the Skokie Public Library newsletter would be appreciated. Richards replied, I just wanted to say publicly to acknowledge that those images are due to their work, and we certainly want to acknowledge that and we'll do some going forward. So we appreciate their efforts in preserving and their willingness to share with the libraries. Thank you. Yep. And thanks to Dick Ritchie and his people and all of them. Not an intentional slight.
Right.
And they're mentioned on our website.
Yes. It just wasn't in the newsletters.
Okay.
So, what I wanted to say about it.
I just wanted to add that I enjoyed the pancake breakfast at the Backlot Bash. It was really great seeing members of the library staff volunteering in other ways and to be out there in the community. And it was great. I ended up, my next door neighbor showed up at the breakfast and we said at the same time, like, I had no idea you were having coffee to this. So it's just great, you know, connections across. And then even when I was leaving, I saw additional library staff and, you know, just talking to people with their families and their kids and stuff. So it was really, really great. And I appreciated the opportunity to attend and see you guys in action. So I thought it was really great.
We're there every year, so Laura and I are pretty good.
And the pancakes were a delight. They were very good, so I like those. That was good. So thank you for-
Like the chefs know.
Yeah, so I,
That's been a service.
so thank you. It's just good, once again, you know, Michelle mentioned it earlier about serving on boards, and I think it's equally as important to be seen visibly in the community in other ways. So I just wanted to say thank you for the breakfast and thank you for participating in that.
Thank you. It's a fun. Thank
So
you.
I have a comment, just as a public event, semi-public event, but it's always nice to see the library in touch and connected with our elementary schools. You know, going to my daughter's open house and seeing Sylvia Public Library table there with staff members and kids who had put together their little paper bookmobiles and showing each other was very exciting. So just to bring some life to that and know that it is appreciated and that table was filled with children who were talking about the library and getting their little takeaways. So it's always nice to see representation from the library.
Thanks for mentioning that.
And then she did give us a great plug about, you know, getting how the libraries were to take books, be able to grab books from, you know, when the bookmobile comes to those
Yeah,
there. So kind of like some of the new programming that they're doing.
But. Please, something.
Yes, I took pictures.
Any other comments from?
This is just a small one, but I so appreciate with our heat waves that this place has been a cooling center. I've used it personally. I've told other people to come by. It's just really so appreciated, and I know that a ton of work has gone into making sure that this can be a safe place for people to go and that it was activated personally, and other people have come during the last few days of, or last few weeks of heat.
Yeah.
Extreme heat.
Yeah.
It's so important.
So
So
it's an
important.
important role of heating and cooling center.
That's right, in the recent newsletter, that's highlighted as well.
Yeah.
You know, just different like emergency and safety plans. You know, the library is mentioned as one of the places in our community where
That's
people can go in winter, you
Yes.
know, coming up.
Yes.
So important.
Thank you for mentioning.
Speaking of, not normally doing cooling centers, but I was here Sunday in the evening and I've never been here on a Sunday evening. There were so many
Oh, yeah.
people in the library on a Sunday evening.
Yeah.
I was just taken aback because I walked in like, is there a special program going on? Why are there so many people here? But it was packed in here and a lot of like young, like middle school age children and high schoolers. And I was just like, people are at the library Sunday at 4 p.m., 5 p.m. But
It's our busiest day of the entrance, I'm sure. Like, for the hours that we're open.
Yeah, per hour, because it's condensed into 6 hours versus 12 on a weekday, and so we still have about 1,800 people come through the doors, but it feels even busier.
6 hours.
yeah, I mean, using the furniture, like the students like had their books and they're laying on like the sofas and chairs and people are outside and It was nice to see like every space being used and utilized, so that was really nice.
Thank you.
Including those beautiful courtyards.
Yes.
Yes.
Enjoy them while we can.
Well, I like the winter,
It's
so
colder,
I
yeah.
do too. I'm a winter.
I love winter.
I like fall too. Like it all. I really like fall.
All right, motion to adjourn,
So moved.
second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Bye.